My name is Peter Coco. I'm the CEO and founder of Vleppo. So Vleppo has been around in its current incarnation for just under a year. But our journey, I think, started quite a few years ago under a previous startup, which we've morphed. So my first startup was 2015 under the name of Definance, which was effectively a marketplace, was a different type of marketplace, a social market network, which was a hybrid of effectively eBay and Facebook, designed to foster price discovery and transparency. So we launched that particular platform, did very, very well, and then we encountered a thing that we like to refer, my co-team and all the rest of it, we like to refer to as the Tinder effect, which is where what happens online, a beautiful match, you swipe right, there's Brad Pitt, beautiful. The next thing you know, you're sitting in a booth offline and you discover that that's not Brad Pitt. That's a 40-year-old guy and that's just not a good look. Actually looks a bit like me. So the point was that what we found in our marketplace was you'd have clients on one side, banks on the other side. And the way the market effectively worked was you would have the client might be banking with Jyske Bank, they might be paying 5%, they've got a mortgage for 2 million kroner, that's great. Their normal sort of options are to either shop around all the banks and lose the will to live while they do that, or alternatively they could go to like a professional broker who might be able to then find the best deal for them and place it accordingly. What we found was we wanted to empower people to be able to set their own rate. Because at the end of the day, people know themselves roughly what's fair and what's reasonable. So our premise was that people would be able to fill out a form, upload effectively what was a bid, saying that I'm prepared, I'm paying 5% to Jyske Bank, and I now want to pay 4.5 to anybody who'll have me, pretty much. Interestingly enough, it had quite a bit of traction, a lot of movement, very little marketing that took place. What was particularly fascinating was our traction happened in emerging markets. So whilst Australia did reasonably well, and we picked up a few bids out in New Zealand, US and the UK, the real surprise package was over in Mexico, Latin America, right through into South America. And I guess what that really brought home to us was, you know, transparency is just, it's fundamental. It's something that we've been deprived of for so bloody long that people are passionate for it and they want it. So, you know, any sort of system that facilitates that is absolutely going to hit the mark, particularly in emerging markets. So, like I said, we went through that process, discovered the Tinder problem, and we realised pretty quickly that we needed some sort of system or some way of validating that what people were doing in the system they'd actually done, some sort of independent record. And I guess in a lot of ways, that's how blockchain found us. It wasn't the other way around. It wasn't like we're going to build on blockchain. What are we going to build? We'll whack this on blockchain. That looks like a great idea. It was a case of, we know that transparency and accountability and basically openness of markets is really where we need to go. But we do need to be underpinning it with some form of distributed ledger to make sure that it is completely airtight. So Vleppo was born. A couple of lessons we learned along the way was when you're a startup dealing with the banking system, they are very, very engaging. They're also very, very slow. And more often than not, when you're a startup and you've got finite runway, you can waste a lot of time mucking around with the procurement areas and mucking around with other divisions before you finally get a commitment out of these people. So we learnt that lesson previously, and we decided, right, we're going to go for digital assets. That's what we're going to target. It's global, reasonably unregulated, and it gives us the ability to scale very, very quickly without having to negotiate with these larger players, which just basically murders you along the way. I'll just quickly clarify, my definition of digital assets is a little bit different to the average crypto play. So the average crypto play, the term digital asset has been hijacked a lot. People just think digital assets, crypto. That's just how it works. Whilst crypto is a digital asset, it's only a very small subset of a very, very large universe. And for the purposes of Vleppo, we are targeting digital assets in the form of videos, photography, anything that can be effectively digitized that we can create a record for. So that's basically what we're targeting there. Our platform at a very, very basic level, and I guess we use the house example. You need to build a strong foundation, which for us is proof of ownership and dispute resolution. So I guess the best way to explain this is by way of example. Dan. So Dan's a client, I'm a graphic designer. Dan's contracted me to produce a logo for him, okay? The way it usually works at the moment is that I produce the logo, we have some sort of loose arrangement, you know, usually it's not a particularly well-formed contract, it's usually been something that's been downloaded off the internet, and consequently I feel a little bit safe. The point comes where Dan's got to pay me. Now this is the chicken and egg thing. It's a case of, well, if I give you the logo, I can watermark it, but let's be brutally honest, you could take the watermark out by just contracting somebody on Fiverr if you really want to. So what we've created is a situation where you create an electronic contract within Vleppo that's written to the blockchain. What happens is then I would upload my asset into the blockchain and it gets tied to the contract. Has me as the creator, me as the owner. Dan pays me, excellent. I will transfer ownership of that asset across to Dan, contract complete. That's wonderful. Dan screws me. Then basically what happens is that we have the dispute resolution process, which is 3 demand letters that all get sent out, all tied back to the contract. At the end of this process, you can wrap that all together, you send it out to a lawyer, you send it out to a debt collector. Now we ran a really interesting Twitter poll back in November, and you think, well, this seems like a bit of a random sort of a solution. But back in November, we had 500 people respond to a poll. 66% said that they'd been basically done over by a client. And these are digital asset creators. So 66% of them have been done over. Of those 66%, half of them didn't pursue it. Too costly, too complex. And when you sit down and you work it through, in most cases, these digital asset creators are putting in 25 to 30 hours just trying to resolve those sort of issues. Writing the letters, going through their emails, trying to work out what's going on, not to mention the 5 to 6 hours of fuming, kicking the cat, going for a walk around the block. It's really, really unproductive time. And we've worked out it's about 25 hours. Average wage for a digital asset creator is about $18, rough touch. So you're talking $500-600 of lost productivity. And this is why most people just write the debt off. With what we've developed, takes about an hour. You set up the contract. Dan doesn't pay. Not that you'll ever do that, Dan. And then at the end of the process, it's effectively completely automated, writes back to the blockchain, nothing more to be done. That's our foundation. You need good, solid foundations, and to deal with the inefficiencies and the inadequacies of the legal system, that basically puts some sort of protection and support in there for digital asset creators. From there, once you've established proof of ownership and you've done that piece of it, you can build the walls of the house. The walls of the house are the marketplaces. Because in the end, one thing with our version of digital assets is understanding evaluation next to impossible. How much is a logo worth? How much is a Facebook profile with 1 million followers worth? There are fragmented markets out there which kind of give you a finger in the wind estimate on what these things are worth. But in practical terms, nobody's got any clue. So for us, our next phase of delivery is the marketplace. The marketplace has to be structured along the lines of similar to financial markets, effectively, to drive that liquidity and drive that price discovery. What that does is it delivers us valuations. When you have valuations, you can lend. And that is effectively what we're shooting for, is the ability to have the correct data sets, all completely independently verified in the blockchain, all completely tamper-proof, because you could imagine if we are the ones controlling the data and there's nothing there to hold us accountable, there's a lot of temptation to play around with numbers, as we've seen with many, many banks do exactly the same thing. That's the principle. Proof of ownership, marketplaces, loans. Our target market, 100 million freelancers in US and Europe, and probably many times that over in emerging markets. But I take your point, Carl. It's interesting. It's the people in those emerging markets that really, really need the assistance from the blockchain. And for us, that's particularly the case, because whilst a digital asset creator could borrow money against their forward order book or borrow money against a digital asset, and that's great for us in the Western world, we do have other forms of safety nets in the form of government support and all the rest of it. If you're a fella in New Delhi, your daughter's broken a leg, what do? You can't go to a bank. You can go and get money from a loan shark, and that might sort out your daughter's leg, but might cause an issue for your own. The point is that we're trying to build a solution here that enables people and provides them access to capital that they otherwise wouldn't have. And that's basically what we're driving for. That's it in a nutshell. That's 10 minutes. Questions, comments? If there's any free beer cans, you can feel free to throw them. I can. Yeah, mate.
So, an example of somebody sending a picture. Does the picture go onto the blockchain?
No. So what we do is we upload the picture. We create a record of that picture or a hash, effectively, and that's what we record in the blockchain. And we're able to then tie that picture to the original contract. And then, obviously, if somebody was to default on that, then we tie the subsequent letters all together for one complete legal record.
So it sounds like you're utilizing smart contracts, digital contract management for this. Does that mean that you're building on top of Ethereum?
No, we looked at Ethereum, and not that convinced. So what we did was back in October. My background is financial markets and banking, and I'm also a sucker for research. I like to know as much information as possible. So we spent probably about 4 months researching as many of the cryptocurrencies as we could that played in that space, and we did a full top to toe on them. And from all of our research, Komodo was the best solution for us. Scalable, fast. This is not an ad for Komodo, but for us and for our purposes, it works very, very well. Their smart contract library is very, very solid. Delayed proof of work provides us another layer of security. For us, it works. For other companies, maybe not so much, but for us, that's where we landed.
What about big files like a video clip?
Yeah, so we're assessing what we can take and what we can't take. We will more than likely put some sort of a limit in place. Because at the end of the day, if you want Lawrence of Arabia to be uploaded, that's obviously going to be a very costly sort of process. So there will be limits, but you would have to think that the vast majority of this enormous universe of digital assets would be able to be handled by what we have in mind. Logos and text contracts. What's interesting as a use case, and this was a bit of a bizarre one, was I was asked the question, is this only for digital asset creators? And I had to stop and think about that for a bit, and we thought, well, take a plumber. Same sort of deal. A plumber has to enter into a contract. They can do the same thing on Vleppo. It's a contract between two parties. What's the asset that can be digitised? Well, it's a photo of the tap. Person's fixing a tap, take a photo of the tap. There's your proof of work, up. Person doesn't pay, 3 dispute letters, wrap it all together, done. It's exactly the same principle.
Yeah, I think I have a question related to that. So, with the digital contract, how would you verify that the uploaded file actually corresponds to what the other person is paying for?
So the way it works, I'll walk it through. So we enter into a contract, okay? The scope is made very, very clear in the contract. So you want me to design a logo that's blue with the word Ford in the middle of it. I then, as the digital graphic designer, will create the logo as per the scope. I upload it up into the system, and as asked before, we will have a repository for many of these types of assets that will sit there with the limit size, because we just can't obviously handle Lawrence of Arabia. That goes up there. A unique hash is created for that asset. That hash is then tied to the original contract, and that's the way it works.
Since you guys are storing perhaps sensitive information on the blockchain, how do you guys factor in stuff like GDPR?
So we're working through that at the moment. But GDPR's, to that end, we've brought a compliance person in to have a good long hard look at it. Because again, this is you have to have the correct security protocols in place to make sure that's completely airtight. We went through a similar process with the finance, because we were capturing a lot of sensitive information in that process too. So same deal.
When we are talking about the blockchains, where it's about the saving information, do you plan to save all the pictures you get for infinity?
No.
We're still working on how long we can store it for.
Yeah, so the intention is that the image, or whatever it is that we're saving, will be going into into the cloud, or whatever, will be stored there temporarily for as long as we need to, either under legislation. So in the case of the law, take Australia, and again, we're working with a number of lawyers here in various jurisdictions, because different jurisdictions, different rules. But you might be required to hold that for 7 years. We may very well hold it for that period. And again, we're working through, it's an interesting thing when you play with the law, one size doesn't fit all. So it's a case of working out what the appropriate jurisdictional restrictions are, and that's what we follow. Are we tapped out? I'm tapped out. Thank you.